So I've mentioned in a previous video that I found JJK's ending to be all around disappointing, with some of his character writing, pacing, and plot being less than stellar. But for this specific video, I wanted to comment specifically on the writing decisions surrounding some of the series' fight scenes. First things first, with Gojo vs Sukuna. Now, I'm not going to complain about the outcome of the fight itself. I don't have much of a problem with Sukuna winning with a dimensional slash, but I do have a problem with how the fight was told. Chapter 235 ends with Sukuna seemingly critically injured, and it's even said by one character that Gojo's already secured victory. Then chapter 236 comes out, and we see that Gojo's lost, having been bisected off screen. Sukuna not only one-shot Gojo, but he held back against him the entire fight, to the point where Gojo says that he couldn't have won, even if Sukuna didn't have Megumi's curse technique, which is just not consistent with what we've been shown up to this point. We're told that Sukuna was nervous throughout the fight. We're told that Sukuna was afraid near the end, that he had to constantly rely on Maharaga to deal damage. So what? That was all a lie? Why did he even bother getting Megumi's body? What was the point if he was so much stronger than even Gojo? It's like when you're playing a video game and beating the boss, but then you trigger a cutscene that has your character losing. It's unnecessarily jarring. And the fact that it was done off screen is the bigger issue. Because we didn't see the slash, or how it was done, or whether or not Gojo had some sort of weakness that allowed for him to be taken out by it, we sort of just have to fill in the blanks for Gojo and create a justification as to why Yuji doesn't immediately get diced up when he approaches Sukuna later. In his monologue at the end of the fight, Sukuna says that his last technique was nearly impossible to pull off, yet he did it the very first time he tried it. This should have been an attack he needed to prep. Sukuna should have needed to find a way to slow Gojo down so he could have the time to do the chanting and movements he needed to pull it off, or have Sukuna struggling to survive while he tries again and again to execute the technique. Either way, it should have required actual strategy, so there could have been an actual chance that he could lose. The way we see it, Sukuna couldn't have lost, because the attack is apparently so effortless and quick that even Gojo doesn't realize it's happened. If Sukuna was just stronger and won normally, then fine. If Gojo had actually won, then fine. What's weird is having Sukuna getting slapped around for 10 chapters just to have Sukuna one-shot Gojo off screen. Sukuna didn't even seem like the most dangerous person in this fight. That was Maharaga. Neither Gojo nor Sukuna came out of this fight looking particularly good. And then there was Gojo's reaction. We can't even feel sorry for him because Gojo doesn't feel any regret or sadness at the fact that he couldn't protect everyone. Instead, he's happy that he fought the strongest. And then there's that statement about Sukuna not needing the 10 shadows to win, which is ridiculous. Not only was that not conveyed at all throughout the fight, Gojo wouldn't even know what Sukuna's full strength was. The single biggest issue with this fight is that it felt like the narrative during the fight and the narrative after it told two completely different stories. And then there was the lead up to the fight, which I'd argue is worse, to the point that no matter how you killed Gojo, it would have been wasted potential. Gojo literally went from being sealed for 100 chapters to entering the most crucial fight in the story. The lack of any sort of character progression in those chapters, and glossing over any sort of interactions he had with his comrades, really hurts any thematic relevance that the fight could have had. The climax of the fight has you believe that loneliness was a core theme of their battle, but the idea wasn't really all that apparent in the lead up or in the fight itself. We didn't fully see what Ino said to Gojo. We didn't get to see Gojo's full reaction to Nanami, one of his last friends, dying. We didn't even get a thorough look at how Gojo felt knowing Sukuna had taken over Megumi's body. The fight glosses over actual emotions in favor of spectacle, and the narrative is weakened because of it. Gojo vs Sukuna might be the most notable example of Gege's strange decision making and it hurting the narrative, but it's not the only one. In chapter 245, we learn that if Higurama's confiscation ability is targeted at someone wielding a cursed tool, that's what's taken, not the target's cursed technique, and that's just incredibly stupid. For one, it makes Higurama's domain expansion a lot less useful against any sorcerer with tools. As long as you have one, he can't take away your cursed energy or your technique. 2, it doesn't really track with what we've been told Higurama's abilities are. Confiscation works on a cursed technique because it's an innate ability, and cursed energy is just a default if there's no cursed technique to confiscate. That makes sense, but a cursed tool is an entirely separate object that shouldn't factor into the equation at all. Hell, considering there's no violence allowed in Higurama's domain, the cursed tool should be automatically taken away. After all, you can't bring a weapon into a courtroom. The whole sequence of events is made worse by the fact that the tool wasn't even that important. Sukuna used it all of once against the guy it didn't even work against, before going back to spamming cleave, which on its own is enough to nearly one-shot everyone. It's not even just a poor choice narratively, it's just straight up boring. The trial could have been a cool psychological battle. Rather than just giving up immediately, maybe have Sukuna argue that his crimes were committed in a different body and that he's technically a different person. Or argue that, while he did indeed do it, he's a spirit, so he wouldn't even be subject to human laws anyway. Or something like that. Those are just some ideas off the top of my head. And not only could it have been a fun mental battle, it also gave us an opportunity to see Sukuna in circumstances different than what we're used to. Maybe have Yuji testify and confront Sukuna for everything he's done. Have Sukuna provide an actual defense. Give us more insights into life in the Heian era. Gege went with the most boring option possible, an option that basically gave us nothing other than getting Higuruma killed. Now, there's one more fight I wanted to touch on. Kenjaku vs Sakaba. This is a bit of low-hanging fruit, but Kenjaku was such an important character that I've gotta bring it up. I really didn't like the Sakaba fight. Sakaba's style of humor doesn't work for me, and it was difficult to follow some of the more culturally specific jokes. But comedy is an especially subjective form of art, so I'll disregard that. I also felt that chapter 243 was the hardest chapter in the series to get through, but that might just be because I didn't like the jokes, so I'll disregard that too. But what I can't disregard is the fact that the conclusion to this fight might be the single worst writing decision in the entire story. After fighting Sakaba for a couple of chapters, their fight concludes and Kenjaku gets taken out from behind by Yuta. And that's it, he's gone. One shot from behind and he's dead. It's so weird that Kenjaku, who's responsible for so much of the story, dies to two people he's literally never met before. There were so many better options here. Chozo and Yuji are right there, and yet Kenjaku dies without Yuji ever knowing that Kenjaku was his mother. It's baffling. Character interactions are what make great moments great. Yuji saying "I am you" to Mahito was such a great moment because Mahito was a curse that he'd known and hated throughout the entire series. If you insert any other character into Yuji's place here, the scene gets substantially less remarkable, because no one else has had to deal with Mahito nearly as much as he has. There could have been so much more here. I'd say Gege missed the mark, but honestly it felt like they weren't even aiming. These were three of the most consequential fights in this story, all three of which could have and should have been so much better than they were, and when you consider the fact that JJK is around 90% fights, especially in its latter half, that reflects poorly on the series as a whole. And that's about it for now. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, or even if you didn't, and I'll see you all next time.